anyway, this is me deflecting from the fact that I had under 6 in a game that landed 15. That's
There
really
you go.
bad. It's the game starts and Calgary scores like, I don't know, like 20 seconds in. I'm like, okay, well, this is bad. And then they score again in the first minute of the game, becoming the fastest team in the history of the NHL playoffs to score 2 goals. 51 seconds in the game, it's 2-0. And I could go through the experience, but it was, as you heard the highlight there, that was 6-6. The total of the game was 6. Both teams reached it. And then Calgary scored 3 more. Literally the most goals scored in a Stanley Cup playoff game since Calgary and Los Angeles, the Kings, en route to a Stanley Cup final where they lost to Patrick Waugh and the Montreal Canadiens. Barry Melrose is the coach in 1993, and I had the under in the game. Kind of stands out as one of the worst bets I've ever made for that reason, Ken. So figured in honor of me with just a absolutely atrocious bet last night that was over literally in the first minute. It was pretty much done. Some of the worst bets we've ever placed. What are some that stand out for you in your betting career?
There are a few, so like I'll give you kind of a smorgasbord here. I will actually start with the first bet that I ever made of any significance in any sport, and the
USC?
first, so like, yeah, so the USC Texas national championship game with Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush, USC against obviously Vince Young in Texas. One of the most hyped sporting events since I've been alive, probably. Forget college football games. I still remember the telecast starting, and you had Will Ferrell on the sideline for USC and McConaughey on the sideline for
Epic.
Texas. I remember watching, having, I didn't work for ESPN yet. I would work for them the next year, basically, or when I graduated college, I should say. But like hearing stories about like that highlight of the game, first of all, obviously the game's very long. The highlight of the game took more than one segment of SportsCenter. They started doing the highlight, took a break, came back and did the rest of the highlight, which never happens. I've never even heard of anything like that before. So that kind of hype, USC was favored by 7.5. And I laid it and felt awesome about it too. Now, to be fair, they had a lead at some point in the game. I believe they were even covering in the third quarter, but there's one of the most famous shots in the history of college football, Young to the pylon touchdown, and then obviously the shot of him with the confetti falling,
And holding the arms up in the air with like both fingers
yep.
pointing. Yeah, I had
And
Texas, by the way.
yeah, we've talked about this event a little bit, but that has, I mean, one of the most famous, that would be like having Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl against Boise State or something with the Ian Johnson, like a Zabransky Statue of Liberty play, which thankfully I didn't have Oklahoma in that game with Adrian Peterson. But that is, I have a bunch more. That is the first bet literally I ever placed was probably one of the worst.
Is there a chance that this is actually the worst bet I've ever placed? Was last night's? Like, if you had bet that, where do you think that would rank for you? Like, it has to be close to number 1, right?
It's almost like I think
because it can't be like you bet like the Charlotte Bobcats back in the day before they were the Hornets.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
And
the
they
stakes
lost by
of the game have to be
in a
pretty
regular
high.
season game. Like this
Right.
is different. It's a playoff game, battle for Alberta, second round to
Right.
the playoffs. Everyone's watching it. 15 goals were scored. I had under 6.
Right. So I think the stakes of the game have to define this conversation almost as opposed to, I'm sure I couldn't even remember. I'm sure I have made hundreds of college basketball bets during the regular season where I like lay 13 and the team loses outright. I'm sure I've made dozens, at least in the past 2 years, of those bets because I just make so many bets every Saturday. But it like can't be those. I don't even watch those games. Like it can't even. So I guess the answer to this question can't be those. How many do you have? Do a couple others stand out for you? I got a bunch.
I have a couple more. I'll give you 2 football ones. A championship game in both.
I had trouble with NFL. I had trouble with like the worst, and I couldn't come up with the worst NFL bet I've ever made. What's funny, we talked about the Colts Texans game yesterday. You take plus 10, they lose what, 30-0?
31-0, yeah.
That's like,
bad.
that's not good, right? Like, it's not the best bet we've ever made.
It's quite bad. I laid it with the Colts in the Super Bowl against the Saints.
Oh,
really, really bad. And I'll give you one from the.
That's like USC Texas.
Yeah. It's not even close. And I'll give you one from the You Better You Bet era. I bet Clemson in the national championship game against LSU. It's like, wow, like you're going to give me 6 points with Trevor Lawrence? Yep. I have to take this. Or LSU's just going to completely dump truck and railroad them the entire game, and it's going to be no contest. Those are a couple that really stand out. I have a couple other ones written down, but like in terms of big game sporting events, I mean, it's hard to get worse than that. It really is.
I had Clemson in the national title game against LSU as well. And I have actually done pretty well betting the national championship game as a rule. I killed the championship game this year with Georgia and the under and props. I I had Clemson against Bama with Watson to Renfro for the game-winning touchdown. I had Clemson plus the points the year before with the
They
onside
covered
kick
in
and
all those
everything.
games, all the
Yeah,
Watson games at least, not the game with
right.
Kelly
Well,
Bryant.
the Lawrence versus Tua game, they won outright and they were dog in the
Yeah,
game.
and killed
So
them.
yeah, and I think I mean I feel like I've been on the right side of most title games, but that I will freely admit I was on Clemson against LSU. Couldn't have been more wrong. Game was in New Orleans, right? So that definitely stands out. I'll give you one other college football one from a while ago. I was in St. John in the Caribbean for New Year's. This was the first year that I was dating my wife. So that would have been the 2015 New Year's, like turning from 2014 to 2015. And it was the first year of the college football playoff. I don't know if you remember that. So the nightcap game was actually very exciting. That was Ohio State over Bama. Like ended up throttling them. Ohio State would go on to win the
The
national
early game
championship.
was Florida State,
I bet
Oregon,
it.
right?
I took Florida State. I actually think they were a tiny dog in the game and there's a famous play in that game where Jameis drops back to pass,
The
gets
meme.
like dump trucked, and that yes, correct, yeah. So
A great
that
meme.
meme, right? When the game you bet becomes a meme, that's usually not a win. Loved and not bet Florida State. Loved Florida State in the game. Loved
Mariota
Florida
against
State.
Jameis, and
Right.
they won 1 and 2 in the
Correct.
draft a
At the
couple months
that was
later.
at the Rose Bowl in
Yep,
California.
that's
Yeah.
exactly
So
right. And then Cardale Jones started the game that night for Ohio State.
correct. Yeah, it was Cardale and Ezekiel Elliott and the rest, and they just kind of ran roughshod over Alabama. One got down. I think they got down maybe even 2 touchdowns early in the game, and one going away in the second half. A lot of explosive plays.
And then killed
Obviously, with
Oregon
that
in the title
offense.
game also.
Yes, and that was another one I got right. Ohio State was a dog in that game.
Absolutely. I think I had Ohio State. I definitely had Ohio State against
They were
Oregon,
plus
and I'm pretty
3.
sure I had them against Bama as
Yeah,
well.
I'm almost positive it closed 3, and the money line was like 130 or something. I mean, it was really like you couldn't believe it in the moment, even that was the. I couldn't believe it, at least in the moment, that Oregon was going to get that much credit.
Yeah, Scott bring a Cardale Jones quote. I didn't come here to play school is one of the great
Right?
lines of all
Yeah,
time.
so a lot of memorable quotes from that era of Ohio State, no question.
I thought he was going to be decent in the NFL when he got picked by the Bull. I mean, then again, I'm not a scout. You bet here with Nick Kostos, Ken Barkley here, going over some of our worst bets of all time. You know, what's funny about I think what I find funny at least about my own Twitter feed, I've live tweeted so many games. And I am very expressive about the things that I say and the bets that I make, where all I have to do is tweet, search myself on Twitter with worst bet, and 150 things come up, and it's just a trip down memory lane of terrible bets that I've placed. And a lot of them will be this is now the worst bet I've placed this year. And I'm like, oh, I remember this one. I remember that one. It wasn't this college basketball season. Last year, Michigan played Illinois at home.
I remember it. Yep.
Michigan was laying 9. And I think Kofi may have been out or
Yep.
Io may have been out. I was like,
well, last year, if it's the season that just ended, then
no, this was 2021.
2 years ago. Okay, got it.
This is Michigan is the 1 seed in their region, the team that lost to UCLA.
Got it. Okay, understood. So yeah, Iowa was out then. Yeah,
and I laid 9, and Illinois won by 26 points. And it's just it was so bad. One of those, it's like taking under 6 and they score 15, where it's not even, you are not even in the ballpark. And from the moment the ball is tipped or the puck is dropped, you lose. It is just a terrible bet. I know what, it's almost, here's the question that organically I come to here. I would rather lose like I did last night than have it come down to the very end and lose the game. It was a no sweat loss.
Right. Well, I think if it comes down to the very end of the game, then it doesn't qualify almost for this segment, right? These have to be the really embarrassing ones. Bet a favorite laying a lot of points, lose outright, bet a total, game ends 9-6. I'll give you a couple others for your consideration that stood out. This is not a game as prominent as the ones we've talked about. For me, I think you actually might disagree with this. I think St. Bonaventure against LSU in the NCAA tournament a couple of years ago is one of the worst bets I've ever made.
You say this a lot. Bonaventure missed a billion shots in the game, and LSU still couldn't put them away. I really don't. I don't think that we took
+1, and they lost by 37.
But no, I don't think they lost by that much, and the game was relatively close in the second half.
I don't think it was relatively close.
I'm going to look this up because
okay.
I don't think that was that terrible a bet, honestly.
Okay. It stands out significantly to me as oh my god. And I have one more, and this one's actually, I like this one too.
LSU won by 15.
What were they up at halftime? Do you have it up?
They were by 9 at half.
Oh, okay. That's a little more respectable. Okay, I'll give you credit for that. One more just real quick for me. A couple of years ago, Masters I started talking to somebody like in the know in professional golf would be probably be the right way to put it. And I remember being like, "Well, who do you like in the tournament? Like you see everybody, all this stuff." And he goes, "Well, I can tell you somebody who I like had like saw up close and personal the week before, and this guy is struggling, can't find his game whatsoever. Hideki Matsuyama. He was really, I mean, just couldn't find his game. I wouldn't trust him at all. And I was like, oh, that's really, I didn't know that. That's like really, really interesting. Against Hideki the whole way, average finish under, head to heads against. And that was the year that Matsuyama won the Masters. So like I was just,
last year, right?
that was yeah, but I couldn't I didn't the COVID year always throws me off. It was the one after the COVID year, right?
Justin
So
Johnson won in
year.
the COVID
So it's
year in
right. So
November.
right. So Scheffler won this one that just ended, and then Matsuyama won the year before. So anyway, Masters last year, if we want to frame it like that. I bet the place under on the guy who just won the tournament. That's all I did.
Like we bet so many. I mean, there have been a lot of like I bet Croatia in the World Cup final against France.
Sure. What about when we monster teased the Jags?
Oh,
The only monster teaser loss.
And it was against Houston, right? It was the
Yes,
second
and
game.
they lost by 2 touchdowns, right?
So I think he had plus 13. How does it lose? Urban Meyer.